All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So, we've had about 24 hours now to digest what we saw in Super Bowl number 59 last night. And of course, last night saw Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes taste defeat in the Super Bowl for the second time in his career. And last night's loss by Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs was eerily similar to what we saw from them 4 years ago in Super Bowl number 55 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In that game, not only did the Bucks get pressure on Mahomes all evening, but they did it primarily with their front four. And we saw that same philosophy last night as the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line was all over Patrick Mahomes like bears on honey. Okay. For the game last night, Mahomes was sacked 6 times, but it seemed like much more as a three-time Super Bowl winner never had a chance to get his feet set in that pocket last night on any of his throws. And it really wasn't until the Eagles backups came into the game late when the score was decided when we saw KC get into a rhythm on offense and score some meaningless touchdowns. Pressure is the key on Mahomes and any of these great quarterbacks that are playing now or who have ever played in the National Football League, as it is hard for any quarterback to defeat you when he can't get his feet set and he's sitting up there worrying about a pass rush. And it's also demoralizing for an offensive line when they're getting beat by a four-man rush. That's what we saw last night. We saw Kansas City's offensive line of five get beat by the Eagles' defensive line of four. And in some cases, we had scenarios where, hey, the Chiefs were leaving a tight end back there. The Chiefs were leaving a running back back there. So in certain scenarios, we're talking about 7-on-4, and Philly's D line still was able to get home. It was a game that was supposed to be extremely competitive as the Chiefs were looking to become the first team in Super Bowl history to take home the Lombardi trophy in 3 consecutive years. But it was the Eagles who, from the jump, were the more determined team last night. Early on, Philadelphia's defense, they simply set the tone on one Patrick Mahomes, while the evil Eagles offense made the Chiefs pay for on defense for keying on running back Saquon Barkley. The Chiefs defense and defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo basically dared Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts to beat them, and he did it to the tune of 17 of 22 passing for 222 yards and a pair of touchdown passes, along with 72 more yards on the ground and a rushing TD en route to being named the Super Bowl 59 most valuable player. And defensively, like I said before, and I'm going to continue to say it, the Eagles' pursuit of Patrick Mahomes with their defense was relentless. And early on, you got the tone. It was Philly was up 10-0. Mahomes threw that ill-advised interception. He was picked off by Eagles defensive back Cooper DeJean, who ran it back 38 yards to give Philadelphia the 17-0 lead midway through the second quarter. And even before that play, because it was a third down scenario, we saw the Eagles really dialing up the pressure. In the two previous plays on that drive, Mahomes was sacked. And honestly, in each play, Mahomes never had an opportunity. And of course, as this game progressed, the happy feet of Patrick Mahomes took over because he was throwing passes where he was thinking about the pressure. And anytime you can get a quarterback thinking about the pressure, rushing up his timing, it throws every single thing off. And of course, right after that, you get the pick to make it 17-0. And what happens on Kansas City's next possession? Patrick Mahomes shows another interception on the plus side of the field for to put Philadelphia in scoring range once again. And credit to Eagles defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, because prior to last night, his teams had not been able to get a win against Patrick Mahomes. That was totally different. And like I said, When it got to 17-0, at that point, Vic Fangio simply released the thoroughbreds from the barn because we just saw Patrick Mahomes running for his life. And by halftime, Kansas City found themselves down by the score of 24-0. And honestly, with that, the competitive nature of Super Bowl 59 was out of the window. And for me, my biggest question is this: where are the adjustments from Andy Reid? We saw Kansas City try to, roll the pocket for Patrick Mahomes, but they hardly ran the football last night. Okay, and if you can't run the football and if you can't keep your opponent on balance, you know what? It ain't going to work. Kansas City attempted 32 passes last night on offense to just 11 runs. Okay, and it was late in this contest before we even saw the Chiefs get into Eagles territory. Okay, so I really don't think there were adjustments made by Andy Reid's offense, and I didn't see any adjustments made by the Steve Spagnuolo defense because guess what? They came out in the second half still looking to stop Saquon Barkley. And if you looked at the majority of the plays, especially the one that really iced the game for Philly when Jalen Hurts went up top to his former Alabama teammate Devonta Smith, it was one of those. It was off of a play action, and you look at how many people bit with the football going to Saquon Barkley. And the problem is this, yes, Saquon Barkley had a phenomenal season for the Philadelphia Eagles, but guess what? You look at the two wide receivers that Philly has out there, Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. They're not exactly chopped liver. And it's one of those scenarios where if you're going to give A.J. Brown one-on-one, if you're going to give Devonta Smith one-on-one, guess what? You're going to be in for a long game. And that is exactly what happened for Kansas City last night. Devonta Smith had 4 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown grab. A.J. Brown, 3 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown grab. And it just seemed like to me, hey, that Kansas City defensively, they came in with the mindset, we've got to stop Saquon Barkley and we're going to make Jalen Hurts beat us. And like I said before, that is exactly what they did. Credit to Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore because he's been on top of his game for this playoff run, these 4 games in the postseason for Philadelphia. And of course, now he's going to look to segue into his next position in the National Football League. Won't have to travel that far because he's going to be the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, the same team that plays in the Superdome where Super Bowl 59 was played last night. And of course, like I said, prior to last night, Vic Fangio's teams had never been successful against a Patrick Mahomes led team with the Chiefs. But at the end of the day, Fangio's defense, they smelled blood in the water. And it is a difference maker when you could just get pressure with your front four. It makes life so much easier for your DBs. It makes life so much easier for your linebackers. And we saw that last night because it wasn't even really thought of, for the Eagles to really have to dial up the pressure because they were creating so much pressure with their front four, and it allowed the linebackers to move around. And of course, when you got a situation like that, it takes away from an explosive tight end like Travis Kelsey. It takes away from the big plays up top. Why? Because your DBs and your safeties are able to sit back in coverage, and it's a game changer. Okay, you think about pressure that defenses have been able to create over the years in the Super Bowl, and of course, prior to last night, 3 situations for me that come into mind. I always think about Super Bowl number 42. Of course, Steve Spagnuolo was the defensive coordinator that night for the Giants when they upset the previously undefeated New England Patriots. And that game was simply all about the Giants' defensive line being able to put pressure on Patriots quarterback Tom Brady. I talked about Super Bowl 55 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they beat these Kansas City Chiefs. And then also Super Bowl number 48 when the Seattle Seahawks front was able to consistently get pressure on Denver Broncos quarterback Peyton Manning. It is the key. And of course, speaking of keys, what a difference a year has made for Nick Sirianni as the Eagles head coach. Of course, 2 years ago, he got the Eagles to the Super Bowl. They were 3 points away from knocking off these Kansas City Chiefs. Basically came back with the same team last year, did not have the chemistry. They had two new coordinators, one on offense and one on defense, because of course Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon had left after 2023 to become head coaches in the NFL. But nonetheless, the chemistry, if you will, was never there for that Eagles team. They limped down the stretch, and in their playoff loss last January to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they basically seemed like they simply did not want to be there. Bringing in Kellen Moore this season on offense, bringing in Vic Fangio defensively, and I think bringing in a guy like Saquon Barkley, because Barkley to me was always a leader with the New York Giants. He just played on bad teams. But now you came in and you got back to where your bread is buttered. You came back to running the football, and having an explosive guy like Barkley, just changed the tenor of that offense, in my opinion. But nonetheless, say what you want about Nick Sirianni, might chirp at it with the fans or the media, but at the end of the day now, he's a Super Bowl champion as a head coach, and you cannot take it away. And speaking of not taking things away, Howie Roseman, in my opinion, does not get enough credit nationally. Of course, people in Philadelphia love him, but nationally, as far as the moves that he continues to get done to run this front office, I talked about Saquon Barkley coming to the Eagles, and it might have been the steal of steals in free agency. And with that said, it might be time for us to do a wellness check on New York Giants co-owner John Mara, because John Mara said last offseason he'd be very sick if Saquon left town and got busy and had success. Well, guess what? Not only did he leave town, not only did he have success and is continuing to have success, but he's doing it with your biggest rival. Okay. And, for years, a lot of people thought that Saquon simply could not get it done with the New York Giants. It wasn't the fact that couldn't get it done. It was simply the fact that the Giants could not get it done around Saquon. And of course, now with Philadelphia, the rest is history. But on the flip side, for the Kansas City Chiefs, where do they go from here? Because I think last night was a gut check. And if you're the Chiefs fans or any of the Chiefs fans, you look at it like this. I feel like this team, the Chiefs, yes, they are still successful. Okay, you're talking about three Super Bowl championships since 2019, five Super Bowl appearances since 2019. A lot of franchises can't even say that for their entire history. Okay, but I feel like the Chiefs simply were stepped on the field last night, and they believed their own press clippings, and they felt like, you know what, all we got to do is show up. And it was one of those where the Eagles played with a chip on their shoulders. Okay, from the word go. And a lot of these guys on this Eagles team, they were there 2 years ago when they lost to these same Chiefs. And at the end of the day, many people have said it. I'm going to echo it. I don't understand it from being in that position, but I'll say this: people always say, football people, that the biggest gap in sports is between winning and losing the Super Bowl. John Madden, the late great John Madden, said it all the time. And typically, when teams come back, there's a different taste in their mouths. And of course, these Eagles were the bullies last night. Kansas City showed up like hoping to win or basically anticipating winning. The Eagles went out there and they wanted to make sure that they earned it, not Kansas City, them. You look at the Chiefs like this. I think going forward, clearly they've got to work on their offensive line, because in losses, your weaknesses get exposed a little bit more. So I think definitely in this offseason, you've got to work on your offensive line. You've got talent there at the wide receiver position, especially with a young man like Xavier Worthy. He's going to be the future in this Chiefs passing game. You got Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco at the running back position. Do you want to upgrade and get more of a playmaker there? And I think the biggest thing for the Chiefs, to me, no disrespect to that team, but I feel like in recent years, it's been like, you know what? We've got Patrick Mahomes, we've got Travis Kelsey, we got Chris Jones, and we got 50 guys. And I think leaning on the likes of Jones, Kelsey, and Mahomes will get us to the promised land. It has gotten you to the promised land in the past, but I think right now it might be time for the Chiefs to adjust and adapt to that. You look at last year's Super Bowl win for Kansas City over San Francisco when the Chiefs needed those big plays made in the second half of that contest and in overtime. It was their big guns. Travis Kelsey made big catches. Chris Jones made big stops defensively. And of course, Patrick Mahomes made the big time plays with his arm as well as his legs. I think this time around, I think Kansas City needs to start not rely on those big three to get everything done for them, not simply focus on their system and start focusing more on bringing in playmakers. A guy like Travis Kelsey, is this the end of the line for him? I think he could still get it done at a very high level. But to me, Kelsey's focused on a lot of things off the field, personal relationships, business ventures, you name it. And at the end of the day, you can't simply get it done forever. Also, we're looking at the AFC West coaching wise. Okay, that division has gotten a lot more complicated. And I know the Kansas City went 5-1 in the AFC West this season. But again, you got Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers. You got Sean Payton with the Denver Broncos. And now you've got Pete Carroll with the Vegas Raiders. And of course, all of these three coaches that I've just mentioned, two of them have won Super Bowls. The other got to a Super Bowl. And two of these all coaches also won national championships in college. So they know how to get it done. They know how to put a team together. The other contenders in the AFC, they're still looking up to the Chiefs. Okay. And I'm talking about the Ravens. I'm talking about the Bills, the Bengals, and so many others. So it's one of those, as long as you got Mahomes, you still got a shot. But how much longer is Andy Reid going to do it as the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs as well? I mean, you're looking at Andy Reid right now. If he stopped coaching, he's a Hall of Famer. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're talking about a guy who is a three-time Super Bowl champion. He has 6 Super Bowl appearances, all the playoff wins that he has, all the regular season wins that he has, all the different quarterbacks that he has gotten to the postseason with. Okay, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it where Andy Reid stands on things. Okay, I'll tell you one thing right now that definitely should change. I'm not guaranteeing you that it will, but I think some of these teams that play the Kansas City Chiefs, they simply step on the field and they are in awe of Patrick Mahomes and that aura. And you're not going to beat a team, you're not going to beat a player like that if you're just mesmerized by him. Okay. And you go back and you look at last night, you go back and you look at the Super Bowl 4 years ago against the Bucks. Okay. And any other time that Mahomes lost in the postseason, didn't happen that much. Those teams were not afraid of him. Okay. And those teams were willing to do whatever it took to win. And like I said before, and I talked about this a couple of days ago with my game pick, I said to beat the Chiefs, you've got to be aggressive. You cannot settle for field goals. You got to score touchdowns because settling for field goals, okay, plays right into their hands. All right. They like to keep the game close. And if it's close, going into the fourth quarter, it's Mahomes time. Philadelphia was aggressive from the word go. They went for it on fourth down. They went out there, tried to score the touchdowns. Okay. Defensively, they kept the pressure on Mahomes. Defensively, they forced turnovers on Mahomes. You got to go out there and you got to be relentless if you are going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. You look at the Buffalo Bills in the regular season when they beat Kansas City. They were aggressive from the word go. Okay, that's the bottom line. That's the only way that you're going to do it. Okay. Also, for me, I just hope that this puts the end, at least for now, as far as Patrick Mahomes being in that greatest of all time conversation for quarterbacks. Not saying that he can be there, that he cannot be there, rather. But I just feel like players, in the middle of their careers, I don't think it's time to be comparing them to the all-time greats. I think when we're talking about the back end of a guy's career, or when he's finishing up, and we can see the full body of work, then we start to have that conversation. But I think too many people in the media want to throw it out there right now just to have that conversation. Patrick Mahomes is great. Let's revisit this maybe 7 or 8 years from now, when he is towards the end of his career. If he didn't retire by then, you never know what can happen. But I just think it's unfair to start comparing things in the middle of a guy's career. I think Patrick Mahomes still has plenty of football left. I still think he can go out there and achieve a lot of great things in his NFL career. I just don't think now is the time. But nonetheless, looking at next season, and now it's 31 teams around the NFL that are looking up and trying to knock off the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champs. And of course, the question is going to be, can and will the Eagles be able to run it back? Well, guess what? Philadelphia, they got a championship parade coming this Friday. You know, Jalen Hurts got the opportunity to live it up at Disneyland today as the Super Bowl MVP. And then you got Philadelphia. They got to figure out who's going to be their offensive coordinator for 2025. And it's going to be very interesting because now, if you're Jalen Hurts, you're talking about having your fourth different offensive coordinator in as many years. I don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be for Philly next season. The bottom line is keep giving the football to Saquon Barkley. Yeah, he's going to be a year older, but nonetheless, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Also, where's this team going to be at mentally? Because it's a little bit different when you're the hunted and not the hunter. And I know that if the Eagles lose a game next season, it's not like they're going to have to give up the Lombardi trophy. But it's just the fact that they're going to be everybody's Super Bowl next season, and everybody's going to be gunning for them. You look at that NFC East right now, the Washington Commanders are up and coming with Jaden Daniels. The Dallas Cowboys, in their minds, they, you know, if you listen to Jerry Jones, they should have been in the Super Bowl this year. But nonetheless, it's still the Cowboys. Let's see how they rebound. What are the 49ers, Packers, Lions? A lot of contenders in the NFC going to do. And then, of course, what are the Eagles going to do? Well, I'll tell you like this. Howie Roseman continues to nail it in the offseason between free agency and the draft. And the draft is what separates the Philadelphia Eagles from a lot of teams around the National Football League. They've done a good job drafting. Just look at some of the guys they brought in from Georgia on that defensive side of the ball. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. at linebacker. Of course, 20 years ago, his dad, Jeremiah Trotter Sr., was a starter for the Eagles when they lost to the New England Patriots. But nonetheless, a guy like him getting into that system in Philadelphia. Cooper DeJean, to me, was a guy who fell to the Eagles in the draft. And of course, the rest is history. And we could just keep going right down the list as far as moves that the Eagles have made. Mekhi Becton, the Eagles brought him over from the Jets, changed his position on the offensive line, and the rest is history. Saquon Barkley playing on so many bad Giant teams coming into the Eagles organization, and the rest is history. So for me, the biggest thing is going to be how hungry that this Eagles team is going to be heading into next season. And now, of course, it's all about the road to Santa Clara and Super Bowl number 60 in Northern California next season. Of course, the offseason has somewhat started for most of the teams around the NFL. Free agency still got a ways to go. Got the scouting combine coming up, and before you blink, it's going to be the NFL draft and OTAs. But nonetheless, this night belonged to the Philadelphia Eagles, and this night belonged to Jalen Hurts. Okay, it's one of those where he played good enough for the Eagles to beat the Kansas City Chiefs a couple of years ago. He just had that one critical turnover that changed everything in that game. But last night, Jalen Hurts said, "Not on my watch." Yeah, he threw the interception, and you wondered, hey, was Kansas City going to be able to get it going after that? But just like it was a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts led the Eagles in rushing. He did it again last night. Philly, however, did have 135 yards in the ground. We saw a very confident quarterback last night, and Jalen Hurts basically said, "This is my night." Okay, and he wouldn't be denied. This Eagles defensive line would not be denied, and the Eagles team would not be denied as they thwarted Kansas City's history and they made some history of their own. The Eagles are moving up a little bit. Two championships as a franchise right now. Okay, you figure 4 appearances on the watch of Jeffrey Lurie as the team owner in Philadelphia, and of course, the Eagles go on to be a consistent winner each and every year around the National Football League as contenders. But nonetheless, like I said, last night belonged to the Eagles. This NFL season belonged to the Eagles as they are the Super Bowl champs. And like I said, let's see what the offseason will prevail for both the Eagles and Chiefs. And like I said before, I want to see how hungry that the Eagles are to come back and try to run it back themselves in Santa Clara. But nonetheless, it was all about the Eagles as they would not be denied their Super Bowl championship. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 pounds of sports knowledge podcast at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.